I recently created a bunch of animations for UnderArmor to use for a promo they were doing to celebrate Joel Embiid becoming the NBA MVP. For this week's Fresco Tip Friday, I thought I'd walk you through the process for creating this exploding type animation. You don't have to use this with type, you can actually make pretty much anything explode with this process. Let's head over to the iPad and blow stuff up. First thing I'm going to do is tap on this animation button on the bottom right, and then I'm going to tap on my first frame and then duplicate that. And then I'm going to grab the selection tool here, and I'm just going to draw like a jagged shape like this in the corner, and then grab the selection tool and just sort of like move that out a little bit. Deselect that, then I'll do another one over here. I'm just sort of shifting it over and maybe up a little bit. And we could do another one down here. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab like a rough brush. I'm going to use the Retro Splyco Classic Inker from their liner set. And I'm going to double tap the modifier to use it as an eraser. And then I'm just going to sort of like rough up the selection a little bit so it's not so smooth. And then go through the areas where it didn't fully separate. I'm also going to turn my smoothing back down so that I can get quicker rough lines. Then maybe just draw some freehand cracks like this. Okay, now we can go ahead and duplicate that frame. And what we can do now is grab these pieces and then move those even sort of further out. And I like to sort of make them a little bit smaller as I'm doing so. And then make like new separations. And if you end up getting some pieces from another selection, it's no big deal. You can play around with like rotating shapes too, so it's a little more chaotic. The goal is to just break it up a little bit with each frame so that it like gives the sort of progression of just exploding, not of explosion. So like make it a little bit smaller. You could also like play around with squishing it a little bit and like just rotate it like that. I'm actually going to adjust my onion skin down to just one frame. I'm going to bring the opacity down a little bit lower because it was getting a little confusing and hard to see. And then sometimes you could just go ahead and like grab the entire side like this and just move like the whole thing out a little bit, maybe make it a little smaller, rotate it. It's sort of like an experimental process, but usually it works regardless. So it's just sort of moving it out progressively. Erase in more lines, make the cracks bigger, make these shapes smaller. Then you could kind of go in like this and like take little pieces off so it's like shattering even more so. And the more you can like break up the pieces, the more it'll have that like exploding vibe, and it'll help us to disintegrate the pieces faster because that's what we want to do. We need to get rid of all of the shapes. So now we can duplicate that frame. And now we can take these things and move them out even further. So you could like grab like a whole section like this and then shrink it, rotate it, push it out further. And sometimes it makes it more believable looking if you kind of separate it so it's not like a full section, like different quadrants. Like I see I left that piece there. We want to definitely move it, but this will just sort of keep it at a different rate so it's not perfect. You just want to make sure that you don't leave anything in the same spot. You want everything to move a bit. So this one up here, maybe put that one that way. Okay, and then it's helpful to just come back in and break it up a little bit further too, just to make it more random, like an explosion. I'm gonna use that eraser, break this up some more, just draw in some more cracks. I think I'll make my brush smaller so it's a little more fine-tuned. And you can start to scroll through and see that it's like starting to come to shape. So let's duplicate that once more. And before we start moving stuff, I'm just gonna kind of go in and erase some of this stuff even more to get it even smaller. And then let's just kind of make some selections, rotate and make them smaller and move them out. Just sort of making random selections. And then what you can do to make sure that nothing is in the exact same spot, grab the selection tool and make sure this is just set to one frame. And then we can just sort of expand this out a little bit. And that way you know nothing has sort of stayed static. So instead of duplicating this one, what I'm gonna do for the next frame is to just add a blank frame and then come back to this one and select this lighter blue color. And now I'm just gonna draw some shapes in the areas where there are like big chunks, but just have it sort of make it little pieces that are dissolving, just to sort of finish out those areas like it's just sort of exploding. And I'm also moving them towards the edges. You're just sort of trying to finish out the trajectory of these shapes so that they don't just randomly disappear. As you can see, I'm doing it quickly. I'm not really concerned about it being perfect. And then I'll just come back in and grab some of the darker blue. I'm not even really concerned where the darker blue is versus the lighter blue. Just sort of dispersing it evenly. Okay, and then maybe one more where we just sort of have a few little bits of shrapnel. And we can grab the lighter blue, put a few of those in. Okay, so if we play that, you'll see that it explodes nicely. So then one last thing we can do to give it a little more detail is to come back in and add a few little speckles. So I like to turn off the onion skin at this point. And here, I'm just gonna come in and just put some like little spots, like little pieces, just to give it a little bit more energy and explosion. So it's not like just big chunks, it's just sort of blowing apart. Cool, and then what I like to do is just add in a bunch of blank frames at the end, and then at the beginning we can duplicate that first frame so it's not just constantly exploding. Play that. I hope you had fun with that, and I hope you were inspired to go blow a bunch of stuff up. There's so many different ways that you can add motion to your work in Adobe Fresco, and it's all super easy. Check out this playlist for a bunch of other videos that are super easy to follow along and help you make your work move all over the place. And don't forget, there's new Fresco Tip Friday videos every Friday and new videos every Tuesday. There's live streams, there's all kinds of stuff. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure that you have notifications turned on so that you don't miss any updates. Good talk.